The morning sun cast long shadows across the Dakota plains as Tom Mitchell guided his weathered pickup truck along the dusty reservation road. His cattle trailer bounced behind him, empty now after delivering hay to the tribal council's emergency feed program. The 45-year-old rancher had been making these deliveries for 3 years, ever since the harsh winter that nearly wiped out the reservation's livestock. Tom's calloused hands gripped the steering wheel as he noticed something unusual ahead. A small figure sat alone on a fallen log beside the road, shoulders shaking with what appeared to be quiet sobs. As he drew closer, he could see it was a young Native American girl, no more than 12 years old, wearing a faded purple hoodie and torn jeans. Something deep in Tom's chest tightened. He had 2 daughters of his own, both grown now and living in distant cities. The sight of this child alone and distressed stirred memories of his own girls when they were small and needed comfort. He pulled his truck to the shoulder and rolled down the passenger window. The girl looked up, startled, her dark eyes wide with fear and tears streaming down her cheeks. She had long black hair that fell across her face, and Tom could see bruises on her thin arms. "Hey there," Tom said gently, keeping his voice calm and unthreatening. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" The girl wiped her nose with her sleeve and shook her head, fresh tears spilling over. She spoke in a voice so quiet Tom had to strain to hear her. "I can't go home," she whispered. "He said he'd hurt my little brother if I told anyone." Tom's blood ran cold. He had heard enough stories during his years working with the tribal community to understand the implications. He turned off his engine and got out of the truck slowly, not wanting to frighten her further. "What's your name, honey?" he asked, crouching down to her eye level but maintaining a respectful distance. "Ayana," she said, the traditional Lakota name rolling off her tongue like a prayer. "It means eternal blossom." Tom nodded, feeling the weight of trust she was placing in him by sharing her name. "That's a beautiful name, Ayana. I'm Tom. I've been bringing feed to your community for a while now." Ayana studied his weathered face, taking in the genuine concern in his blue eyes. Something about this white rancher felt different from the government officials and social workers who had come and gone from the reservation over the years. "My stepfather," she began, then stopped, wrapping her arms around herself. "He drinks too much. When Mama works her night shifts at the casino, he does bad things." Tom's jaw clenched, but he kept his expression gentle. "How long has this been going on, Ayana?" "Since Mama married him 2 years ago. He said nobody would believe me because I'm just a reservation kid. He said the police wouldn't care." The injustice of it hit Tom like a physical blow. He had seen the statistics, knew about the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and children, but hearing it from this brave little girl made it personal. "Ayana, listen to me," Tom said firmly. "What's happening to you is not okay. It's not your fault, and you deserve to be safe. There are people who will believe you and help you." She looked at him with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "Really? You promise you won't just drive away and forget about me?" Tom's heart broke a little more. "I promise, sweetheart. But first we need to get you somewhere safe. Do you have any other family? Grandparents? Aunts or uncles?" Ayana nodded slowly. "My grandmother lives on the other side of the reservation. She's traditional, speaks mostly Lakota, but she's kind. She always tells me stories about the old ways." "What's her name?" "Winona Mitchell. Winona Crowfeather. She kept her maiden name even after she married my grandfather." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Mitchell? That's my last name too." "What was your grandfather's first name?" "Joseph Mitchell. But he died before I was born." A strange coincidence, Tom thought, but he filed it away for later. Right now, getting Ayana to safety was the priority. "Can you show me how to get to your grandmother's house?" Ayana hesitated. "What about my little brother Samuel? He's only 8. "If I leave, we'll figure that out too," Tom assured her. "But first, let's get you to your grandmother. Then we can make a plan to help Samuel." As Ayana climbed into the passenger seat of his truck, Tom noticed how small and fragile she looked against the worn leather. She directed him through a maze of dirt roads that led deeper into the reservation, past small houses with peeling paint and yards full of old cars and children's toys. The landscape here told a story of both beauty and hardship. Rolling hills stretched toward the horizon, dotted with sagebrush and prairie grass. While closer to the road, signs of poverty were evident in the run-down housing and lack of basic infrastructure. "Turn here," Ayana said, pointing to a narrow path that led to a modest house surrounded by a garden full of traditional plants. Smoke rose from a chimney, and Tom could see an elderly woman working in the yard. Winona Crowfeather looked up as the truck approached. She was a small woman with silver hair braided down her back and wearing a colorful shawl. Her weathered face broke into a smile when she saw Ayana, but her expression grew concerned when she noticed the child's tear-stained cheeks. The grandmother spoke in rapid Lakota as Ayana ran to her arms. Tom watched the reunion, feeling like an outsider but grateful to see the love and safety this woman represented for the child. After several minutes of conversation, Winona approached Tom. Her English was accented but clear. "Thank you for bringing my granddaughter to me," she said, extending her hand. "She told me what you did. Not many would stop." Tom shook her weathered hand, feeling the strength in her grip. Anyone would have done the same. Winona shook her head. "No, they would not." "You have a good heart. Ayana says your name is Mitchell?" "Yes, ma'am." "Tom Mitchell." The elderly woman studied his face intently. "My husband was Joseph Mitchell. He had a brother named William who left the reservation many years ago. He had blue eyes like yours." Tom felt a jolt of recognition. His grandfather had indeed been named William Mitchell, and family stories spoke of time spent in the Dakotas before moving west to Montana. "We might be related," he said quietly. Winona nodded slowly. "The spirits work in mysterious ways. Perhaps you were meant to find Ayana today." As the afternoon sun began to sink lower, Tom realized this was just the beginning. Ayana was safe for now, but her little brother was still in danger. And the man who had been hurting her was still free. The grandmother's words about being meant to find Ayana resonated with him deeply. He looked at the brave little girl who had trusted him with her terrible secret, and he knew there was no turning back. This fight for justice was now his responsibility too. "What do we do about her stepfather?" Tom asked Winona quietly. The grandmother's eyes hardened. "We make sure he can never hurt another child again. But it will not be easy. He has friends in places of power." Tom nodded grimly. He was beginning to understand that saving Ayana was only the first step in a much larger battle against a system that had failed to protect the most vulnerable. But as he watched the girl help her grandmother tend to the plants in her traditional garden, her tears finally dry, he knew he would see this through to the end. The real test was yet to come. 3 days had passed since Tom brought Ayana to her grandmother's house. During that time, he had barely slept, his mind consumed with thoughts of the little girl's brother Samuel, still trapped in that house with the monster who had been abusing Ayana. Tom sat in the tribal police station, his cowboy hat resting on his knee as he waited to speak with Detective Sarah Crowdog. The building was small and understaffed, with only 3 officers covering the entire reservation. He had already tried the county sheriff's office, but they claimed the reservation was outside their jurisdiction. Detective Crowdog finally appeared, a stern-faced woman in her 40s with short black hair and tired eyes. She had heard stories like Ayana's too many times before. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, shaking his hand. "I understand you want to report a case of child abuse." "That's right. The girl is safe now with her grandmother, but her 8-year-old brother is still in danger." Detective Crowdog sighed deeply. "Do you understand what you're asking? The man you're accusing is Robert Hawke, and he has connections throughout the tribal government. His brother sits on the tribal council." Tom's jaw tightened. "Are you saying you won't investigate because he's politically connected?" "I'm saying it's complicated. We need more than one child's word against a powerful man. We need evidence, witnesses, something concrete. What about the bruises on Ayana's arms? What about her testimony?" Defense attorneys tear apart child testimony all the time, especially when it comes from reservation kids. The system is already stacked against us. Tom leaned forward in his chair. "So you're just going to let him keep hurting children?" Detective Crowdog's expression softened slightly.
"I didn't say that."
"I'm saying we need to be smart about this. If we move too quickly and he gets acquitted, he'll be untouchable, and he'll know who reported him." That evening, Tom returned to Winona's house where he had been staying in a small guest room. The elderly woman had insisted he remain close while they figured out their next steps. Over dinner, she shared more of the family history. "Your grandfather William and my husband Joseph were very close," she explained as she served traditional fry bread and soup. "When William left for Montana, Joseph was heartbroken. They wrote letters for years." Ayana looked up from her food. "Does that make Tom my cousin?" Winona smiled. "In our traditional way of thinking, family is not just blood. Family is those who care for you, who fight for you. Tom is family now, whether the blood connection is real or not. The words touched Tom deeply, but his mind kept returning to Samuel. Ayana, can you tell me more about your brother? His routines, when he's usually alone? Ayana's face grew worried. He walks to school by himself every morning. Mama leaves for work at 6, and Robert usually sleeps until 10 because he drinks so much. Samuel has to get ready by himself. What time does he walk to school? Around 7:30. He takes the path behind our house to avoid the main road. Tom exchanged glances with Winona. Maybe that's our chance to talk to him safely. The next morning, Tom positioned himself along the path Ayana had described. The reservation was quiet at this early hour, with morning mist still clinging to the prairie grass. He waited, his heart pounding with nervous energy. At exactly 7:30, a small boy appeared on the path. Samuel looked remarkably like his sister, with the same dark hair and eyes, but his face held a haunted expression that no 8-year-old should wear. He walked quickly, constantly looking over his shoulder. "Samuel!" Tom called out gently. The boy froze, terror flashing across his features. He looked ready to run. "It's okay," Tom said, raising his hands peacefully. "I'm a friend of your sister, Ayana. She's safe." "Ayana?" Samuel's voice was barely a whisper. "Where is she?" "Robert said she ran away because she didn't love us anymore." Tom knelt down to the boy's level. "That's not true, Samuel. Ayana loves you very much. She's staying with your grandmother right now." Tears began flowing down Samuel's cheeks. "I thought she left me alone with him forever. Can you tell me what Robert does when your mama isn't home?" Samuel's small body began to shake. "He gets angry when he drinks. He hits me sometimes. And he does other things. Bad things. But he says if I tell anyone, he'll hurt Mama." Tom felt rage building in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "Samuel, those bad things are not your fault. You're just a little boy, and adults are supposed to protect you, not hurt you." "Really? But Robert said I was bad. That's why bad things happen to me." "No, buddy. Robert is the bad one, not you. And we're going to make sure he can't hurt you anymore." Tom spent the next 20 minutes talking with Samuel, learning more details about the abuse and Robert Hawke's patterns of behavior. The boy was clearly traumatized, but showed remarkable courage in sharing his story. "Samuel, how would you feel about staying with your grandmother and Ayana for a while?" The boy's eyes lit up with desperate hope. "Could I? Really? We're going to try, but it might be scary for a few days while we figure everything out." "Are you brave enough?" Samuel nodded vigorously. "I'm brave. Ayana always said I was brave." That afternoon, Tom met again with Detective Crowdog, this time bringing both children to the station. Having Samuel's testimony corroborating his sister's story strengthened their case considerably. "This changes things," the detective admitted. "With both children giving consistent accounts, we have a much stronger foundation." But their hopes were dampened when they learned that Robert Hawke had already been alerted to the investigation. Someone within the tribal government had warned him. "He's disappeared," Detective Crowdog reported grimly. "Left sometime last night. His truck is gone, and neighbors say they haven't seen him since yesterday." Tom's blood ran cold. "What about the children's mother? Is she safe?" "We're trying to locate her. She didn't show up for her shift at the casino last night." Winona, who had remained silent during most of the conversation, finally spoke up. "He will come back. Men like Robert Hawke do not run far from their territory. He will want revenge." Her words proved prophetic. That evening, as Tom helped Winona prepare dinner while the children played outside, a truck roared up the dirt road toward the house. Through the window, Tom could see Robert Hawke stumbling out of the driver's seat, clearly intoxicated and carrying what looked like a rifle. "Get the children inside," Tom ordered Winona. "Call the police." But the elderly woman was already moving, her voice sharp as she called to Ayana and Samuel in Lakota. The children ran inside, their faces pale with terror. "He found us," Ayana whispered, grabbing her little brother's hand. Tom moved to the front door, positioning himself between the approaching threat and the family he had sworn to protect. Through the screen, he could see Robert Hawke swaying on the front porch, his eyes wild with rage and alcohol. "Where are my kids?" Robert slurred, pointing the rifle in Tom's general direction. "You got no right taking them from me." "They're not your kids," Tom replied calmly, though his heart was racing, "and they don't belong to anyone." They're human beings who deserve to be safe. Robert laughed bitterly. Safe? You think some white cowboy can come onto our reservation and tell us how to live? You don't know nothing about our ways. I know enough to recognize evil when I see it, Tom said, taking a step forward despite the weapon pointed at him. What you did to those children has nothing to do with tradition or culture. It's just pure evil. The confrontation was escalating dangerously, and Tom could hear Winona on the phone with emergency services, but he knew it would take at least 15 minutes for help to arrive. He had to find a way to defuse the situation before someone got hurt. Behind him, he could hear Ayanna crying softly, and the sound strengthened his resolve. This little girl had been through enough trauma. He wouldn't let her see more violence if he could help it. Robert, Tom said, changing his tone to something more conversational, why don't you put the gun down and we can talk about this like men? But Robert Hawke was beyond reasoning. Years of alcohol abuse combined with the rage of being exposed had pushed him past the point of rational thought. He raised the rifle higher, and Tom knew the situation was about to become deadly. The moment stretched like eternity as Robert Hawke's finger moved toward the trigger. Tom could see the man's bloodshot eyes filled with rage and desperation. Behind him, he heard Winona speaking in rapid Lakota to the children, probably telling them to hide. Just as Robert began to squeeze the trigger, another voice cut through the tension. Robert, stop this madness. Everyone turned to see an elderly Native American man walking up the path, his silver hair braided and adorned with traditional feathers. Despite his age, he moved with authority and dignity. Tom recognized him from the tribal council meetings he had attended while delivering feed supplies. Elder Joseph Littlebear, Robert said, lowering the rifle slightly but not setting it down. This is not your business. When a man threatens children on our reservation, it becomes everyone's business, the elder replied firmly, especially when those children are calling for help. Elder Littlebear approached slowly, his weathered hands visible and non-threatening. I have known your family for 3 generations, Robert. Your grandfather was a good man who fought for our people's rights. What would he think of what you have become? Tom watched as something flickered in Robert's eyes. The mention of his grandfather seemed to pierce through the alcohol-fueled rage, if only for a moment. You don't understand, Robert mumbled. Everything's falling apart. My job, my marriage. I never meant for things to go this far. But they did go that far, Elder Littlebear said gently but firmly. You hurt children, Robert. Innocent children who trusted you to protect them. During this exchange, Tom noticed movement in his peripheral vision. Detective Crow Dog and 2 other tribal officers had arrived and were positioning themselves strategically around the property. They moved silently, using the conversation as cover. Those kids are lying, Robert said, but his voice lacked conviction. They're just trying to get attention. Elder Littlebear shook his head sadly. I have spoken with both children separately. Their stories match perfectly. Children that young cannot fabricate such detailed accounts of abuse. Look at me, Robert, the elder continued, stepping closer. Look into my eyes and tell me you never harmed those children. Robert tried to meet the elder's gaze but couldn't maintain eye contact. The rifle began to shake in his hands as the weight of his actions seemed to crash down on him. I was drunk most of the time, he whispered. I don't remember everything clearly. That is not an excuse, Elder Littlebear said firmly. And you know it. In that moment of emotional vulnerability, Detective Crow Dog made her move. She approached from Robert's blind spot and spoke in a calm, professional voice. Robert Hawke, you need to put the weapon down and come with us. We can do this peacefully. Robert spun around, startled, and for a terrifying moment Tom thought he might fire the rifle. But Elder Littlebear stepped between Robert and the detective. Give me the gun, grandson, the elder said, using the traditional term of respect for a younger tribal member. This is not the way of our people. We solve problems through justice, not violence. The fight seemed to drain out of Robert all at once. His shoulders slumped, and he handed the rifle to Elder Littlebear with trembling hands. I'm sorry, Robert whispered, tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry. Detective Crow Dog moved quickly to handcuff Robert while the other officers secured the weapon. As they led him away, Tom finally allowed himself to breathe normally again. Inside the house, Ayanna and Samuel emerged from where they had been hiding in the back bedroom. Both children ran to Tom, wrapping their arms around his waist. Is it over? Ayanna asked, her voice still shaking. It's over, sweetheart, Tom assured her, stroking her hair gently.
He can't hurt you anymore.
Elder Little Bear approached them, his expression grave but kind. You showed great courage today, young ones. Your ancestors would be proud of how you protected each other. Over the following weeks, the legal proceedings moved forward more smoothly than anyone had expected. Robert Hawke's confession and the testimony of both children led to a plea agreement. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison and was required to register as a sex offender. More importantly, the case brought attention to the broader issues facing Native American children on reservations. Tom found himself testifying before Congress about the lack of resources for child protection services in tribal communities. The children's mother, Maria, returned from where she had been hiding at her sister's house in another state. She was devastated to learn what her husband had been doing to her children, but grateful that they were finally safe. I should have known, she told Tom through tears. I should have protected them better. You're protecting them now, Tom replied. That's what matters. Maria made the difficult decision to move closer to Winona's house so the children could maintain their relationship with their grandmother while starting fresh. Tom helped her find work at a ranch just off the reservation, where she could support her family with dignity. As autumn arrived on the Dakota Plains, Tom found himself spending more and more time on the reservation. What had started as emergency feed deliveries had grown into a genuine mission to help improve conditions for the tribal community. He established a scholarship fund for Native American children, using profits from his ranch to provide educational opportunities that might otherwise be out of reach. Ayana was one of the first recipients, her dream of becoming a veterinarian suddenly seeming achievable. You changed everything for us, she told Tom one evening as they watched the sunset paint the prairie sky in brilliant colors. Before you stopped that day, I thought nobody cared about kids like us. Tom smiled, thinking about how much his own life had changed since that morning when he first saw a crying little girl by the roadside. You taught me something too, Ayana. You taught me that being a good person isn't just about minding your own business. Sometimes you have to step up and fight for what's right. Samuel, now a happy and talkative child, ran up to them with a handful of prairie flowers he had picked for his grandmother. The transformation in the boy was remarkable. With the threat of Robert Hawke removed and surrounded by people who genuinely cared for him, his natural personality had emerged. Tom, Samuel said, Grandmother says you're planning to stay on the reservation permanently now. Tom looked toward Winona's house, where the elderly woman was preparing traditional medicines from plants in her garden. She had become like a mother to him, and through genealogy research, they had confirmed that they were indeed distant cousins through his grandfather William. I think I am, Tom replied. This feels like where I belong now. Elder Little Bear had offered Tom a position as liaison between the tribal government and local ranchers, helping to build economic partnerships that would benefit everyone. It was work that felt meaningful in a way that simply running his own ranch never had. Will you teach me to be a cowboy? Samuel asked eagerly. Tom laughed and ruffled the boy's hair. I'll teach you everything I know, partner. As winter approached, Tom moved his remaining cattle to pastures near the reservation. His old ranch in Montana had sold quickly, allowing him to invest in programs that would benefit Native American families for generations to come. On Christmas Eve, as snow fell softly across the reservation, Tom sat in Winona's living room, surrounded by his new family. Maria was there with her children, along with several other tribal members who had become close friends. Elder Little Bear led them in traditional blessings, mixing Lakota spiritual practices with Christian traditions in the way that many reservation families did. Ayana, now 13 and thriving in school, stood to make a speech. I want to thank Tom for showing us that there are still good people in the world, she said, her voice strong and confident. When I was sitting by that road crying, I thought nobody would ever help me. I thought I wasn't worth helping. She paused, looking directly at Tom. But you stopped, you listened, you believed me. And you didn't just help us that one day. You changed your whole life to make sure we'd always be safe. Tom felt tears in his eyes as applause filled the small living room. Looking around at these faces that had become so dear to him, he realized that finding Ayana that day hadn't just saved her life, it had saved his too. He had spent 45 years living a decent but ultimately selfish life, focused on his own success and comfort. But these children had shown him a higher purpose, a way to use his privileges and resources to make a real difference in the world. I have an announcement, Tom said, standing up. I've been working with the Tribal Council to establish a new child advocacy center on the reservation. It will provide counseling, legal support, and safe housing for children who need help. He pulled out an official-looking document. The Tom and Ayanna Mitchell Child Protection Center will open next spring. Ayanna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. You're naming it after me? After both of us, Tom corrected. Because this work belongs to all of us. We're family now, and family protects each other. As the evening wound down and people began to head home through the gently falling snow, Winona pulled Tom aside. You know, when I first saw you bring Ayanna to my door, I thought you were just another white man who would help for a day and then disappear, she said quietly. I am happy to be wrong. Tom hugged his elderly cousin, feeling grateful beyond words for the journey that had brought him to this moment. The spirits knew what they were doing that day, Winona continued. They knew Ayanna needed someone with the courage to fight for her, and they knew you needed to remember what really matters in life. Through the window, Tom could see Ayanna and Samuel building a snowman in the yard, their laughter carrying on the crisp winter air. These children who had suffered so much were now free to simply be children again. The little girl who had once sat crying by the roadside, believing nobody cared about her, was now a confident young woman with dreams and plans for the future, and the rancher who had once lived only for himself had discovered a purpose greater than anything he could have imagined. Sometimes the most important journeys begin with a simple choice to stop and help when someone cries for aid. Tom Mitchell had made that choice, and it had transformed not just one life but an entire community. The ripples of that moment of compassion would continue spreading for generations to come.